Really, an ICO should be the pre-sale of a token that has a clear utility that you can use for a service or a product. I think that the number one thing that you want to look at is this coin necessary?
Today on the Colored in Crypto podcast, I have on Andrew Chapin, the CEO and founder of Benja. He and his company launched their own altcoin through an ICO, an initial coin offering. The timing of this interview is no accident. We've learned thus far that step one to buying cryptocurrency is buy some Bitcoin on Coinbase. But I've had multiple listeners ask me, well, then what do I do next? One option is to buy some altcoins. In some upcoming episodes, I've booked folks who are launching their own ICOs, and this opens up a whole new world. Again, none of this is investing advice. It's up to you to learn how to evaluate individual ICOs. Which leads us to the ICO Governance Foundation, the group that Andrew's involved in. So, Andrew, what is an ICO?
An ICO is an initial coin offering, or the generation of a crypto token, something that you can use much like Ethereum or Dogecoin or any of these other alternate, non-Bitcoin cryptocurrencies.
Tell me about your experience, your first kind of entry into ICOs.
Yeah, sure. So I am the founder of a company called Benja. Benja is a merchandise ad network that's been around for just over 3 years. And we work with really big brands. We work with like Patagonia and Nike, and we help them sell their stuff on websites and mobile apps. And as we kind of were working through our next stage of growth, we saw a lot of the action that was going on in cryptocurrencies and initial coin offerings, and we decided to run one ourselves.
I read an article that you posted on Medium where the headline was something, like the SEC just gave me a call. What I want to get into today is what is the state of this alternative crypto coin world? It seems very, very confusing, a lot out there, and like how do you get a sense of what is solid ground?
Yeah, so first, just kind of add a little bit of color here
Thank you.
Yeah, add a little color to like why we decided to do an ICO, and then maybe I can get into just some of the things that we observed. The whole idea is there are a number of problems in ad networks in general, and that's really what our core business is. There are a lot of problems around price transparency, time of settlement. There's a lot of partners who have been doing business together for years, and it still takes 120, 150 days to close billing cycles. There's a lot of issues like that a move to blockchain for a business like an ad network really addresses problems for both sides of the marketplace and certainly the people in between. We're looking for, as a small ad network, ways to make that next step, address some problems that our vendors and publishers are having. And we saw this as a great opportunity to do that. In addition to, using this as like a pre-order of inventory to serve as like a fundraising mechanism. So as soon as we saw this opportunity, we really started digging into what makes for a successful ICO, what people are doing, how much work goes into this. And we noticed, it's just like it was in the early summer when we started doing this, and still is today, really just the Wild West. Certainly there were a lot of indications of that over the summer. Now you're seeing, a lot of governments are kind of cracking down, like the Chinese government has been involved and things like that. Really recognizes that fact.
How did your ICO, how well did it go? Did it fulfill the objectives you had, and what's going on now with it?
Yeah, certainly. We successfully raised the amount of money that we were looking to raise. And right now we're in the middle of developing a dashboard so that if you were trying to sell some shoes on the Benja ad network, you could actually come to our dashboard, purchase some Benjacoin, and place your ads. So we're in the middle of developing that.
I'm not so much from the online ad world, but it does make sense what you're explaining, that this is a transparent form of exchange, this token you've created, this Benjacoin, and there's real value in that. There's a lot of coins out there where it's hard to understand, what problem they're solving or what's the benefit of getting on the blockchain. Do you have any smell tests? Can you look at an ICO white paper and immediately, or help us identify the things we should look for to see if it's legitimate?
Yeah, I think that the number one thing that you want to look at is this coin necessary, right? So a lot of these projects will talk about completing international transactions without a fee or something like that. That's something that you can already do with Bitcoin or Ethereum. There's no need to bring in that extra layer. If there's a clear use case, then all right, I'm digging it.
Initial coin offerings, ICOs. It sounds so much like IPO, and I think a lot of people do consider this stock, which is, stock as an investment, which is why
no bueno.
The SEC is looking at this. Like, what's going on in terms of government regulation, first of all, and these ICOs?
Yeah, and that's something that we saw at Benja when we were getting ready to launch Benjacoin. Our ICO ran in the month of August, and I believe on July 25th, the SEC announced that they had checked out the DAO token and had determined that that was a security. And so just to add a little bit of our story to this, that night I kind of panicked and said, like, wow, well, we don't want to get in trouble with the SEC. I see why they're considering the DAO token to be a security, which we did not want to be. And I believe that we have a clear use case for like why this is not a security. So I reached out. This is the article that you were referencing earlier. We ended up on the phone with the SEC. We talked about it. We talked through those things. And yeah, I mean, you're right. Like a lot of ICOs that are out there even still today really are securities. Some of these things, they're talking about buying gold or buying real estate, kind of serving like you said, like a share of stock. Which is not what these things are. This is not what this is supposed to be. Really, an ICO should be the pre-sale of a token that has a clear utility that you can use for a service or a product.
Let's just, before we unpack that whole layer of the governance foundation, let's just explain for a 5-year-old why is an ICO not an IPO?
Well, an IPO is really all about like ownership of equity, like in a company or in an organization. And so when you're buying shares of stock during an IPO or afterwards, it means something. It represents, 0.5% or a percentage of this company, and means that you lay claim to the assets that back that or the profits. An ICO is really like a token. Like you can really think about it like when you go to an amusement park and you're buying 10 tokens, you get and each ride is a token. You're really buying those token to participate, to like take part in whatever the product is.
Okay, let's get into your involvement with the ICO Governance Foundation. How did that come about?
Yeah, so during the course of all of this, I shared that story that I just shared about us reaching out to the SEC. It went, kind of viral a little bit, certainly within the crypto world. And we received a lot of attention for it. There was some that was negative. A lot of people saying, like, why were you inviting the fox to the hen house, But then a lot of it was positive. And one of the positive outcomes was Miko Matsumura reached out to me about a foundation, a Swiss foundation that he was starting called the ICO Governance Foundation. And the whole stated purpose of the ICO Governance Foundation is along the lines with what I had been sharing in these articles. It was about attracting, big institutional money to these markets by acting like adults. It's about like offering a standard set of rules. It's about offering, standardized filings. There's even some things like we talk about custodial agreements, which we can get to, and just ways of kind of growing up as an industry and staying away from the big scams and the big schemes that we were seeing.
What makes the ICO Governance Foundation different than other similar entities, and what do you like most about it?
I like what Miko has built with the ICO Governance Foundation because it is truly independent. We're bringing in a lot of different partners from a lot of the big kind of institutional money that is in cryptocurrency right now and is also outside of it. And really, there's no ownership. I think the structure of it as a Swiss foundation, everything is good. And it doesn't come from, a corporate-owned entity. There are a few different kind of quote-unquote governance foundations that come from corporations, which, of course, like you hope they don't have ulterior motives, but, often do.
Could you state In one sentence or so, what problem then is the ICO Governance Foundation solving?
Yeah, the ICO Governance Foundation is working with crypto token issuances to make sure that they're doing things correctly, right? And that's as a protection for the market. It's a protection for you as a buyer. It's a protection of everybody.
And success would look like what in, like, let's say a year from now?
Yeah, success would be that people can go to the ICO Governance Foundation website, type in the name of something that they're considering getting involved with, and get a very fair, very clear representation of what that project is and what the risks are.
So would this sort of be like certified organic, like a third-party company that goes in and sort of validates that this food is what people say it is or where it comes from?
In a way. There's also another layer to it. If you were looking at the top-tier certification that the ICO Governance Foundation is planning to offer, let's say that you were running an ICO that was raising $500 million, and you had A, B, and C were your goals for that money, for that $500 million. What you would do is actually hand that over to the ICO Governance Foundation, that $500 million that you raise, and you say, hey, release it on the following schedule, release it as we hit benchmarks, and release it as, we're actually developing this thing and we're doing it, whatever those benchmarks are. And that provides an awesome layer of security to the token buyer. I mean, because a lot of these people are buying tokens with the plan of using them in a product that isn't ready and may not be ready for a year.
Let's say there's a coin called Coloring Crypto Coin, and somebody spends, $1,000 on an exchange, purchases a number of Coloring Crypto coins. Is there anything right now that prevents me from just taking that money and flying to Mexico and retiring?
No, and that's kind of the problem, at least in the way that most of these things are structured. You would receive the Ethereum or the Bitcoin or whatever you were collecting, and you could do with it what you want.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm thinking about Mexico and margarita. And there is no Coloring Crypto coin right now, folks. That's just an example. But, I mean, that's incredible. So right now, people are buying coins based on what trust?
This is why a lot of the best ICOs, the most successful ones you'll see, are ones with like great team pages, right? Because I think that a lot of the more grown-up money in the market right now, they're looking for names that they recognize. They're looking for people who've done it before. They're looking for advisors that are, strong. And that's really important because it's really like right now probably your best indicator for future success.
You've had like some exposure here to ICOs and altcoins. In terms of applications, I don't know if you can discuss specific coins, but even just conceptually, what are some of the more exciting ideas out there that you've heard of for altcoins?
What I look for now are projects that have many different partners involved and don't rely on the success or failure, of a single organization. So what I mean by that is we issued Benjacoin for use on the Benja ad network, right? If Benja goes out of business tomorrow, the Benjacoin has no other utility. Okay, that's a huge problem. And people pointed this out as we were going through the ICO, and they were totally right. Now, what I'm looking for would be more of like maybe a general ad marketplace coin that involves maybe 3, 5, 7 different ad networks. So if one of them fails, you still have a good utility for that token.
What are your fears and concerns about this space?
Yeah, well, I believe in the technology and the ideas behind blockchain so much. My fears really are more about, first of all, the bad actors. The people who are in here running schemes, running scams. There are a lot of even people who say that they're marketing firms that'll help you run a successful ICO, and they're billing tens of thousands of dollars. There's just a lot of heat that isn't good for the space. And the reason that that's scary is not just that there's going to be some money lost and there's, unfortunate, circumstances like that, but it's going to attract the wrong kind of attention from governments. And you already see that. I mean, you're seeing that in China right now.
How do you feel so far about the United States government's role in crypto?
I am generally optimistic. A lot of people were initially scared of the U.S. government's response to these things. I'm generally optimistic because the SEC isn't painting these things with a broad stroke. They're not looking at ICOs and saying, like, well, they're all really bad. They understand that it's something that they need to look at on a case-by-case basis. That's certainly been the indication so far. And that's good. That's just generally a good thing. What you've seen is, I believe it was Labor Day, China just blanket banning ICOs temporarily, but blanket banning them. And that's scary. I mean, that's not a good response.
1-something billion people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of people. And, of course, the states, Russia and China, those are the three main drivers of all of this. So it was a big actor, and the markets responded accordingly. You saw a lot of negative price action for Ethereum and Bitcoin. But generally, I am optimistic. I think that China should come out of this on the right side. I know the United States seems very solid in their standing, and I'm encouraged by the news out of Russia as well.
I had a friend of mine who wanted to, actually she heard about the podcast, and she said, I want to get into cryptocurrencies. So I told her to get an account on Coinbase. She did that. She bought some Bitcoin, and I said, hey, doesn't it feel great? You're in the game now. And she said, well, what do I do next? How would you advise somebody who's brand new to this, just got a cryptocurrency account, has a Bitcoin or some Ethereum or a little bit of cryptocurrency, and they want to start looking at this altcoin opportunity? What do they do?
That's a difficult question to answer. I mean, I think that the best advice